In this video, we're going to learn how to form a pinch pot. So how we're going to start is getting our clay, which is in this bag here. It's really important that whenever you get clay from the bag, notice how tightly sealed this is. That's what's important, is whenever you have it, it should be really tightly sealed. Whether you twist it and have a twisty tie or you tie it, whatever it may be, it needs to be tight. You guys have individual cut cubes here. You're going to use 1 cube. It's about 2 pounds. Notice how this is wet plastic clay. It's perfect. It's really easy to press your finger into. It's wonderful. So it's really going to be easy to work with. Now, how to keep clay so it's easy to work with, it goes back to how you seal the bag. So you need to twist it tight, but if you notice the clay is getting a little bit dry, what you need to do is get your spray bottle and spray it at least 3 times. If your spray bottle sprays a good amount. If it's a little, doesn't spray a lot, then obviously more than 3 times. But do that and then seal your bag up tight. This will help keep it moist as well as put moisture back in if it's losing some of its moisture. Also, if you notice it's going hard, maybe you have some holes in your bag, so check that every once in a while and put it in a new bag if the bag has holes in it. So we're going to put it to the side here and grab our clay. This is 2 pounds of clay here. What we're going to do is divide it into 3 sections. They're not going to be equal sections though. So instead of just immediately starting cutting, we're going to grab our needlepoint tool and divide it up into sections. What's nice is if you mess up, you just can smooth over it again. So I'm going to divide it here. Notice how there's one section that's a little bit less, and then there's equal sections there. Those larger sections need to be the same. Then grab your wood modeling tool, the blade side, and you can cut the sections. This section here we're not going to use for a bit of time, so you can just spray it and put it back in the bag. Now look here and double check that this is equal sections. If you notice they're not 50-50, see one's a little bit bigger than the other, smooth it off and redraw it so it is 50-50. This is really important. It's going to make your life easier later. So really pay attention to that. I'm happy with it. Now we're going to cut it. So I want to do a disclaimer. Do not use this tool to cut clay like this. It is really sharp, and if you slip at all, you're going to hurt your hand or your fingers, and it's going to be like a horrible paper cut. So please use the tools that I suggest to cut things. But you may think that works well, but it won't, I promise. So I'm going to continue cutting with this tool here, and voila, you have 2 equal sections. We're happy with this. Okay, so we're going to start with 1 and we're going to form it into a ball or a sphere. And you're going to do exactly how I'm showing it here. You're going to use your hands and just kind of honestly hit it until it starts creating that shape. I first like to start with rounding the edges and then I start rounding it into an actual sphere. Okay. Happy with that. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other one. Round out the edges and then try to round it out so it's more of a ball shape. If this hurts your hands, because it can, you can use a solid surface and hit it against the surface to round it out. But it needs to be a solid surface. My table is not that sturdy, so I am not doing that. But you can do that if your table can sustain the amount of pressure you're doing. But your hands work just fine. If you are hurting your hands, then just get a good surface. Now compare your shapes to each other. They need to look pretty much the same. They're not 100% perfectly the same. That's okay. But as you can see, mine are pretty dang close. So this is how we start our pinch pots. I'm going to put one to the side and start with the other. If you don't want to leave your other clay ball out, because maybe it's going to dry out really badly, please put it in clay bag. You're going to get your needlepoint tool and you're going to make a hole. Now, do not go all the way down. I'm going to actually show it to you here. Do not go farther than that line. You do not want to go all the way through, or you'll have to start all the way over again with wedging. So be mindful of how deep you press the other side of the needlepoint tool. You can also use your thumb to do this, but honestly, my fingernail gets caught and it gets underneath my nail. It's just a little difficult, so I like to use the needlepoint tool. So you literally are going to put your thumb in and start pinching. That is why it's called the pinching method. Again, I get clay under my nails. So I start with my thumb, but then I like to switch to my other fingers and almost use my palm as a support when I'm squeezing. I really want you to pay attention to, I am not squeezing that hard at all. Okay, this is not like you have a stress ball in your hand and you're squeezing as hard as possible. You're doing a little at a time and rotating the ball evenly. If the shape starts to get a little squarish, like I just showed you, just hit the bottom a little bit and smooth out that weird shape. You really need to pay attention to what's happening with your pinch pot as you are pinching it. If you're creating a weird shape and not more of a ball shape, then you need to shape it a little differently. If you are getting a tiny bit of cracks in it, you can use your sponge. Do not use this much water. Squeeze it all the way out till all the water is dripping off, and then use your sponge. If you use too much water, it's going to make it more difficult for you to smooth out the clay. You'll have too much water and you'll have to remove the water. If you get cracks, you can, what I call scoring, it's the official term. You scratch in different directions, use a little bit of clay and cover it back up and smooth it on there. But it has to be wet plastic clay. I'm going to say that again. It has to be wet plastic clay for it to just smooth perfectly on there. Okay, so it's getting smooth. It still has moisture in it, and so I'm going back to that slowly pinching and rotating method to get the shape we want. Play around with what is the best way to pinch, but the thing to be mindful is the thickness of the walls. This is very thick. You do not want your walls this thick. You want it thinner, about that thin. It really actually is going to be pretty thin, but still hold structure. A lot of you are going to think you're getting too thin when you are not. Now, do not pinch like this. Notice if you can see little pits everywhere, that means you are pinching too hard and not consistent. Now I'm fixing it here and you can still see the little craters everywhere. But if I just continually pinching more with all of my fingers at once, I can re-even the clay. Again, do not pinch too hard. Pinch with all of your fingers at once and slowly and rotating that clay. It's really going to make your life easier. We can still fix it if you pinch too hard, but try to start off with not pinching hard. Okay, I'm getting some cracking. Moisture, moisture, moisture. Here we go. You want to keep the moisture in the clay. So if you need to keep wiping your sponge over the edges, that's what you need to do. I'm just now getting some cracking and need to add moisture, but you may need it right off the bat. Who knows? But moisture is your friend, especially with this gray clay here. It's an earthenware clay. It actually will turn white once it gets fired. So you won't have a gray piece, you'll have a white piece. Okay, adding that moisture again, saving the edges. There we go. Okay, I'm a lot more happy with how this is turning out. There we go. That equal pressure, I can't say it how many times, equal pressure. Support the inside and the outside when you are pinching. Don't forget about that bottom of the pot. You might forget about it and the thickness is too thick, but do not forget to do the bottom as well. Look how much more thin that is. That looks great. Yep, that looks wonderful. I'm happy with that. So we're going to set this to the side. And guess what? We're going to do it all over again with this ball of clay. So now we're going to have 2 pinch pots. I promise you there's a reason we're doing this. One, you get practice to do it twice, but also you'll see what we'll do with the pinch pots when we are done with them. So we're going to just repeat this process. While you are making your second pinch pot, be mindful of the size. Your goal is to make it the same size as your first one. So obviously mine's too small. It's also too thick, the walls, but it's not going to fit with this other one. There you go. Look at that. I'm getting closer. Here we go. I cannot tell you how much patience is so important with this method. Honestly, any art form, patience is a great virtue. It's something you'll probably get better in my class, is learning patience. And being okay with the hiccups you get. If you get a crack, that's okay. We just fix it. If you push too hard with your fingers, then you just fix it. You just keep moving forward, and that patience just keeps growing and growing. There we go. It's starting to look like it's pretty close to the shape of the other ball here. We're going to just do one last check. I'm getting kind of picky of smoothing, so I'm smoothing out a little bit, but we're going to see if they fit on top of each other. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. If you made it too big, that means you just got a little distracted, and we're just going to make the first one a bit bigger so they fit together.